First contact with a human warship left aliens and humans speechless. It was supposed to be an ordinary day. The Galactic Federation had been in discussions for months, preparing for the first official contact with humanity. The Federation had observed Earth from afar for centuries, but humans had always remained a curiosity, volatile, unpredictable, and unworthy of full integration into the galactic fold. However, with humanity's recent advancements in space travel and technology, the time had come. A small fleet of Federation ships, sleek and shimmering, descended upon Earth's atmosphere, poised to land. Their mission was simple: initiate contact, offer peace, and perhaps, most importantly, introduce humanity to the wider galactic community. In a remote region of the Pacific Ocean, the Federation's flagship, a massive, crystalline vessel named Warship, docked in the air, hovering above the waters. The ship sent out its signal, a pulse of light and sound that humans, still in the early stages of space exploration, could only dream of comprehending. Scientists across the world gathered in a mix of awe and trepidation, waiting for the message. But then, as the first contact protocol dictated, the Federation fleet received an unexpected response. It wasn't from Earth, it wasn't from the United Nations, or any of the leading powers on the planet. No, it came from a singular source, an enormous warship, one that had never been seen before. The warship appeared from the darkness of space, its hull a gleaming silver, so large that it seemed to eclipse the very stars around it. The energy signature it gave off was unlike anything the Federation had ever encountered: sharp, intense, and impossible to ignore. It was clear this was not a mere ship of explorers or diplomats. No, this was a ship of war. The Federation's diplomats and military leaders could only stare in stunned silence as the unknown ship moved toward them with a chilling sense of purpose. On the bridge of the Warship, Captain Drayle, a seasoned officer of the Federation, stared out into the abyss. "What in the galaxy is that?" she murmured, her voice tinged with a mixture of disbelief and unease. Her crew echoed her confusion. They had never seen anything like it. The warship loomed ever closer, and the Federation fleet scrambled to respond. Communication channels were opened, but the response they received was unlike anything they'd prepared for. A booming voice, deep and resonant, crackled through their systems. "This is the Valorous, flagship of the Terran Union. Stand down immediately. You are trespassing." The voice sent a shiver through every Federation officer on the bridge. The word Terran was unfamiliar to them, yet the tone, the sheer authority in the voice, was unmistakable. This was not a voice of diplomacy or peaceful intent. This was the voice of a people who were used to commanding, used to making demands, used to being obeyed. "Terran?" Captain Drayle whispered, before she turned to her communications officer. "Find out who they are, now." The Federation's ships hovered, awaiting a response, but none came. Suddenly, the Terran warship fired a single, powerful blast into the atmosphere, a pulse of energy that sent shockwaves through the surrounding space. The Federation fleet quickly analyzed the power reading. It was nearly 4 times stronger than any weapon the Federation had ever developed. The message was clear. The humans weren't here to negotiate. The Federation was not the only one left speechless. Back on Earth, the leaders of the world watched in stunned disbelief. On their screens, the enormous human warship hovered silently above the Federation's flagship. No one had ever seen a human-made vessel of such size or power. It was a testament to humanity's unknown potential. They had only just begun their journey into space, and yet, they had something that no one had anticipated: a warship capable of bending the galaxy to their will. For years, humanity had been relegated to the fringes of the galactic community, thought of as primitive and insignificant. But now, the Federation had learned the hard way: humanity was not a species to be underestimated. On the bridge of the Warship, Captain Drayle watched as the Valorous loomed overhead. The Terran ship was silent, waiting, as if daring them to make the next move. She swallowed hard, recognizing the significance of the moment. "Prepare to engage," she ordered, but there was no certainty in her voice. Before the command could be fully processed, the voice of the Terran commander echoed again. "You are outmatched. Return to your space. If you value your existence, do not test us." The Federation had expected to be the ones to initiate the first contact, but here, in this moment, humanity had taken control. their military might, their resolve, their very presence had reduced the most advanced empire in the galaxy to a state of stunned silence. Drayl's heart raced as she realized that, in that moment, the balance of power had shifted. The humans weren't just another species. They weren't just a curiosity. They were a force to be reckoned with. The Federation fleet withdrew, their ships retreating into the depths of space, leaving Earth and humanity in peace, for now. But one thing was certain, humanity would no longer be ignored. And the galaxy would never be the same. End. The aftermath, humanity's place in the galaxy. The days following the first contact were filled with shockwaves, not just on Earth, but across the entire galaxy. News of the Terran warship, the Valorous, spread like wildfire through the Galactic Federation. The once dismissed humans had made their presence known in the most dramatic way possible, with overwhelming power and unyielding authority. The Federation's High Council convened in emergency sessions, trying to make sense of what had just transpired. The Vorial and the Federation's other ships had been forced to retreat, an action unheard of in their history, especially when faced with a species so new to space travel. And yet, in a matter of minutes, the humans had gone from being considered primitive to being feared. On Earth, however, the reaction was different. People were not fearful of their newfound place in the galaxy. They were elated. For decades, Earth's leaders had worked tirelessly to build their interstellar capabilities, but they had always been overshadowed by more advanced alien species. Now, humanity had shown it could stand its ground. The news channels were filled with interviews, analysis, and celebrations. For the first time, the world's governments agreed on a singular objective: engage the Federation, learn more about them, and, most importantly, begin to understand how to wield the power that had been thrust into their hands. Back in the vastness of space, the Valorous hovered near the Federation's border. The Terran Union had not just arrived in the galaxy. It had announced its arrival with force. The Terran fleet, while smaller than the Federation's, was rapidly gaining recognition as a new, undeniable force. Its fleet, equipped with cutting-edge technology and weapons, outmatched anything the Federation had expected, and more ships were being constructed every day. The Federation knew it needed to act quickly. Captain Drayl's report. Captain Drayle sat at her desk in the Vorial, her mind still reeling from the encounter. The Terran Union's warship had displayed nothing less than absolute dominance. Her hands hovered over her console as she drafted her report to the Federation Council. To the Council of the Galactic Federation, she began, her words typed slowly, carefully, as if she were still processing the enormity of what had happened. The humans are unlike any species we have encountered. They exhibit a level of power and aggression that is entirely foreign to our understanding. Their warship, the Valorous, possesses technology that surpasses our own by a considerable margin. In addition to their technological advantage, their resolve and willingness to act without hesitation makes them a serious threat to the stability of the Federation. Her finger hovered over the send button. For the first time in years, she found herself questioning the Federation's policies, its assumptions, and its long-held beliefs. Humanity wasn't the insignificant species it had once been made out to be. The Valorous was a statement, a declaration that the humans had arrived, and they were no longer willing to be pushed around. But just as she was about to finalize her report, a message arrived. It was an encrypted transmission from Earth. Message from Earth. This is General Elena Hayes of the Terran Union. To the Federation Council and all species of the galactic community, you are hereby placed on notice. Humanity is no longer an unremarkable species in your eyes. The Valorous is only the beginning. Should you wish to avoid further conflict, we suggest you engage with us diplomatically. We are not interested in war, but make no mistake, we will defend ourselves if necessary. Your decision to engage with us peacefully will determine our future relationship. Choose wisely. The Federation's response. The Federation's response to the message was swift. A delegation was immediately sent to Earth, not with the usual air of diplomacy but with the undertone of caution and uncertainty. They had hoped for a peaceful resolution, but after witnessing humanity's display of power, it was clear that the old methods of negotiation would no longer apply. This wasn't the same species that had been silently observed from afar. On Earth, the Terran Union's leadership was poised for what might be the most significant decision of their history: to accept the Federation's overtures for peace. or to reinforce their newfound dominance. General Elena Hayes, the face of humanity's new military might, stood before the camera, ready to address her people and the galaxy. The galaxy must understand that humanity will not be a passive observer, she said in her address. We do not seek to dominate, but we will not allow ourselves to be dominated. Our place in the galaxy will be one of respect, not submission. Her words echoed through every communication channel across the Federation. They were direct, forceful, and calculated. She wasn't just speaking to the Federation, she was speaking to every species in the galaxy. Humanity had been underestimated, and now it was making its own rules. The next chapter, the rise of the Terran Union. For the next few months, the Federation and humanity engaged in a tense but necessary period of negotiation. The Federation sent their diplomats, but their tone had changed. Gone were the lofty ideals of an intergalactic utopia. The Terrans had shaken the very foundations of their beliefs. At the same time, humans learned just how dangerous the galaxy could be. The Federation was a large and complex network of species, and though they had been forced into a defensive posture by the Valoris, they still had the numbers and resources to put up a formidable fight. Yet, one thing was clear, humanity had moved beyond being a fledgling species. They had entered the galactic stage, not as pawns, but as equals, if not superiors. Over time, humanity's true potential began to show. The Terran Union was not just a military power but a scientific one as well. They rapidly expanded their research into faster-than-light travel, weapons technology, and diplomatic strategies. Their warships grew larger, their fleets more powerful, and their resolve unbreakable. In the coming years, the Federation would have to reckon with humanity's growing influence. Their presence in the galaxy would soon no longer be a mere anomaly but a force of nature, an indomitable force that could not be ignored. End of Part 2, The Rise of Humanity. The galaxy had learned a hard lesson: never underestimate the human race. The Terran Union strikes back, a new era begins. The quiet aftermath of the first contact was but a brief interlude, as the Federation and the Terran Union engaged in a series of tense negotiations. Both sides knew that the stakes had grown too high to ignore. For the Federation, it was a matter of maintaining control over their vast, established empire. For humanity, it was a matter of asserting their rightful place in the cosmos. Over the months following the initial standoff, the Terran Union began making significant strides in reshaping the balance of power. Earth, now a cornerstone of the Union, had not only showcased its military might with the Valoris but also demonstrated a level of technological innovation that far outpaced anything the Federation had predicted. The technological advancements humanity had made in a relatively short period of time were both a testament to their ingenuity and a warning to the rest of the galaxy. While the Federation leaders had initially hoped to bring Earth into the fold with diplomacy, their repeated attempts at compromise were met with increasing resistance. Humanity was no longer the vulnerable species they had once believed them to be, and now, the Terran Union was flexing its muscles. The opening move, the Terran fleet. The Terran Union had been working diligently behind the scenes to expand their military fleet. It wasn't just about having the most powerful ship. It was about establishing dominance through numbers, tactics, and sheer force. The Valoris was just the beginning. Soon, the Union's fleet would grow to include dozens of massive warships, each bristling with advanced weaponry and shields that even the Federation had yet to match. Terran shipyards in orbit around Earth and Mars were operating around the clock, churning out warships, cruisers, and research vessels at an unprecedented pace. At the same time, Earth's space colonies were rapidly developing their own defenses, joining the Terran military in a united front. Humanity had learned a vital lesson: diplomacy alone would not guarantee their survival in the galaxy. They would need to be prepared for any challenge, both diplomatic and militaristic. As the Terran fleet gathered strength, the Federation felt the pressure mounting. The Federation's military leaders were reluctant to engage in another conflict with a species they had underestimated. But after the show of force humanity had demonstrated, they could not afford to appear weak. There was a palpable sense of unease among the Federation's High Council. Even their most seasoned generals acknowledged that if humanity's fleet continued to grow at this pace, it might soon outstrip their own. The Federation responded with what they hoped would be a decisive move: a fleet of their own. reinforced by some of the most advanced ships in their arsenal, was dispatched toward Earth. It was a demonstration of power, a warning that they would not back down. They intended to remind humanity of their place in the galactic hierarchy. General Hayes' leadership, the Terran Union's resolve. At the helm of the Terran Union was General Elena Hayes, whose leadership had become the face of humanity's military might. Hayes was not just a general. She was a symbol of what humanity had achieved and what they were capable of. A strategic mastermind and an unwavering force, she had quickly earned the respect of her people and the galaxy at large. As the Federation's fleet approached Earth, Hayes prepared the Terran forces for what many believed would be an inevitable conflict. But unlike the Federation, the Terran Union had no desire to start a war. Instead, they wanted to prove a point. Humanity would not be subjugated or manipulated. They would stand as equals, and if the Federation was unwilling to respect that, they would have to learn the consequences of their actions. Prepare the fleet for defensive maneuvers, General Hayes ordered from her command center aboard the Valorous. We do not seek war, but we will not hesitate to defend our home. They will understand our resolve today. Her words were sharp, confident, and filled with a quiet authority that resonated throughout the ranks. The Terran military had one goal in mind: to show the Federation that humanity was not just a force to be reckoned with, but an unstoppable power that would not be coerced into submission. The Federation's ultimatum. The Federation's fleet entered Earth's space with all the power and presence they could muster. Their ships, advanced, sleek, and towering, moved with precision. Their command ships were protected by heavily armored dreadnoughts and elite starfighters that formed a perimeter around their flagship. The Federation Council had sent their most experienced commanders to engage with the humans, hoping that a show of force would bring them to the negotiating table. On the bridge of the Federation's flagship, Admiral Xal looked out at the Terran fleet, a deep concern in his eyes. The Valorous stood out among the Terran ships, gleaming and intimidating. It was clear to him that the Terrans were not just defending their home, they were preparing for a fight. "Admiral, we have been ordered to send a message," a junior officer reported. "The Federation Council insists we deliver an ultimatum to the Terran leadership. They must stand down, or we will proceed with force." Xal stood silently for a moment, considering the implications. The Federation's fleets were vast, but the Terran fleet had shown more power and resolve than they could have anticipated. The battle ahead, if it came to that, would be catastrophic. "Send the message," Admiral Xal finally said, "but be prepared for the worst." The message was broadcast across all channels. "To the Terran Union, you are not a member of the Galactic Federation. You have no place in our territory. Stand down immediately, or we will take action." Humanity's response, a defining moment. As the Federation's ultimatum reached Earth, General Hayes stood before her officers, her eyes steely and focused. There was no hesitation in her voice as she addressed her commanders. "Make no mistake," she said, "this is not just a threat against us. This is an attack on every human who has fought, bled, and died to bring us here. We will not back down. We will not compromise. If the Federation wants to test our resolve, we will give them a lesson they'll never forget." The orders were clear: prepare for the worst, but show them who we are. In the depths of space, the two fleets stood poised for war. The Federation had made its move. The Terran Union had made its stand. The galaxy would watch as humanity's fate was decided, and with it, the future of the Galactic Federation itself. End of Part 3, The Tension Before the Storm. The question now was clear: would the Federation back down, or would humanity be forced to prove once and for all that they had the power to command the stars? The galaxy was about to witness a defining moment in history. The first battle, humanity's defiant stand. The moment the Federation's ultimatum was broadcast, the air in every command room across Earth seemed to grow thick with tension. The Federation, once the undeniable authority in the galaxy, had thrown down a challenge. The Terran Union had no choice but to respond in kind. General Elena Hayes stood before a massive display screen on the command deck of the Valorous. Her eyes scanned the positions of the Federation fleet, each ship neatly organized in the vast expanse of space. She could see the Federation flagship, a colossal cruiser named Sovereign, surrounded by an impressive array of support ships and destroyers. There was no mistaking their intentions: they were prepared for war. Yet, Hayes did not flinch. There was no fear in her voice as she issued her orders. All Terran ships, prepare for battle formation. We will not fire unless provoked. But make no mistake, if they fire, we will respond with overwhelming force. We are fighting not just for our survival, but for the future of every human in this galaxy. Her officers nodded and began transmitting the commands to their fleet. The Valoris and the other Terran warships moved into their battle positions. A well-coordinated formation that showed both discipline and an understanding of the devastating power they wielded. The Federation fleet may have been vast, but the Terran fleet was compact, efficient, and capable of striking hard and fast. The opening shots. As the fleets hovered in the cold expanse of space, it was clear that both sides were measuring each other, calculating the risks, and trying to avoid an all-out war. Tensions were high, and every officer aboard both fleets understood the gravity of the moment. Admiral Xal aboard the Sovereign was a seasoned veteran of countless conflicts, yet even he felt a sense of unease. He had underestimated humanity before, and he would not make that mistake again. But the Federation had its orders that demanded a show of force. The first volley came unexpectedly, without warning. A Federation destroyer, eager to prove its superiority, fired a salvo of plasma torpedoes at the Terran fleet. The missiles sped toward the Valoris and its sister ships, their trajectories locked on target. The Federation's commanders believed they would crush the Terran ships with a single blow. They were wrong. The Valoris was the first to respond. Its shields flared to life with a blinding blue light as the incoming plasma missiles struck the barrier with immense force. Each blast shimmered against the ship's energy shield, but none of them breached it. The missiles exploded harmlessly against the powerful barrier, and within moments, the Valoris returned fire with a fury. Terran turbolasers and railgun cannons fired in rapid succession, the blasts streaking through space with devastating precision. A Federation cruiser was the first to be hit, its shields failing almost immediately. The first shot was followed by a series of punishing impacts, its hull buckling under the force of the barrage. In a matter of seconds, the Federation ship was nothing more than drifting debris. The Federation fleet faltered for a brief moment, their commanders stunned by the sudden and unexpected response from the Terrans. All ships, engage, Admiral Xal bellowed, recovering from the shock. Show them the power of the Federation. The battle had begun in earnest. The fury of the Terran Union. As the Federation fleet launched their counterattack, the Terran Union responded with swift, calculated precision. The Valoris and its accompanying warships formed a near-impenetrable wall of firepower. Their turbolasers lashed out with terrifying accuracy, taking down Federation vessels with every shot. Meanwhile, Terran fighters, smaller but more agile than the Federation's, darted between the larger ships, picking off enemy starfighters and causing chaos within the Federation's ranks. Status report. General Hayes demanded as her fleet continued to engage the Federation. Enemy ships in disarray. Ma'am, the communications officer replied. They're losing ships faster than they can deploy reinforcements. Our weapons are outperforming their expectations. Good, Hayes said, her voice cold and steady. We'll show them that we will not back down. The Valoris moved with terrifying grace, its massive form cutting through the chaos like a blade. As it fired, its cannons tore through enemy ships, causing explosions to ripple across the Federation's formation. A Federation dreadnought, one of their most heavily armed ships, tried to retaliate, but it was too late. The Valoris fired another shot, and the dreadnought's shields flickered before they failed entirely. The blast from the Terran warship's railgun struck with such force that the dreadnought was torn apart in an instant, its fragments scattered across the void. The Federation was reeling. Their fleets had been outgunned, outmaneuvered, and outclassed. The Valoris was a terror on the battlefield, and the smaller Terran warships had proven they could more than hold their own. The Federation's retreat. Admiral Xal, watching the unfolding chaos from his command deck, knew they could not afford to lose any more ships. The balance of power had shifted so dramatically that the Federation was on the verge of collapse in this engagement. We're pulling back, Xal ordered. All ships, retreat to Federation space. This is a tactical withdrawal. The remaining Federation ships began to fall back, their engines firing as they sped away from the Terran onslaught. However, the Terran fleet didn't give chase. General Hayes had made it clear from the outset, this was a battle to defend humanity's place in the galaxy. not a battle for conquest. The Terran Union wasn't interested in wasting resources on a drawn-out war. As the Federation fleet retreated, General Hayes stood at the command console, watching as the Federation's ships limped away. The battle was over. Humanity had proven its dominance, but there was no time for celebration. They had made their point, but the war was far from finished. A message to the galaxy. As the dust settled in the vastness of space, General Hayes issued a message across the galaxy, one that would be heard by every species, every empire, and every command in the Galactic Federation. Let it be known that the Terran Union will no longer be a silent player in the galaxy. We are here, we are strong, and we will fight for our right to exist as equals among you all. No longer will we be underestimated. The galaxy will understand that humanity is a force to be reckoned with. Her voice was calm, unwavering, and resolute. The galaxy now understood what the Federation had learned the hard way. Humanity had arrived, and they would not be pushed aside. End of Part 4. The Tide Turns. The first battle had been fought, and humanity had emerged victorious. But this was only the beginning. The Federation, wounded and humbled, would now have to decide how to respond to the rising power of the Terran Union. Would they accept humanity as an equal, or would the galaxy witness the dawn of a new era of interstellar conflict? The stage was set, and the future was uncertain. The Terran Union had made its mark, and it would never be erased. The Federation's response, a new kind of diplomacy. The galaxy watched with bated breath in the aftermath of humanity's stunning victory over the Federation's fleet. The Terran Union had sent a resounding message, not just to the Federation but to every species in the galaxy. Humanity was not to be underestimated. The Federation, wounded and humiliated by their retreat, was faced with a choice: confront humanity head-on or seek a different path forward. In the heart of the Federation's capital, the High Council convened in an emergency session. The mood was tense as the council members, representing the various species of the Federation, debated their next steps. Admiral Xal, still reeling from the loss of his fleet, was the first to speak. "We cannot afford another battle with them," he said, his voice weary. "The Terran Union has proven its military might. If we continue to pursue war, we risk destroying everything we've built. A new approach is needed." His words were met with murmurs of agreement from some council members, but others were more reluctant. Representatives from the Boreal species, still nursing the wounds of their earlier encounter with humanity, were not so quick to yield. "But we cannot simply allow them to walk away unchallenged," said Boreal Councillor Iller. "They humiliated us. They made it clear that their place in the galaxy will not be negotiated. We can't just bow to their demands." "This is not about bowing," replied Xal, his tone growing sharper. "This is about survival. Humanity's warships are unlike anything we've faced before, and their technology, it far surpasses our own. To engage them in battle again would be suicidal." The council fell into a tense silence. The idea of peaceful diplomacy was foreign to many, especially those who had never had to negotiate with a species that had just defeated them in battle. But they were running out of options. "We must adapt," said a calm voice from the back of the room. It was Councillor Tall, a neutral representative from the peaceful Zelth species. "Perhaps it's time for a new kind of diplomacy, one that acknowledges humanity's strength, but also their potential as partners. The galaxy cannot remain in a state of constant conflict. It is time for the Federation to change. Humanity's terms, a new era of diplomacy." Back on Earth, General Elena Hayes and President William Carter stood together in the command center of the Valoris. While the battle was over, the war of words was just beginning. Hayes, ever the tactician, understood that winning the battle was only the first step in what would be a far more complex struggle. "We've proven our strength," Hayes said, her voice steady, "but the real challenge is what happens next. The Federation will be forced to reconsider their approach to us. We must be ready for whatever comes." President Carter nodded, his mind already working through the diplomatic implications. The Federation might have been forced to retreat in the face of humanity's military power. But the Federation was not a passive organization. They had resources, allies, and an extensive network that stretched across the galaxy. Humanity's path forward would require careful navigation. "Then we set the terms," Carter said firmly. "We offer them one option: peaceful cooperation on our terms. No more subjugation. We will stand as equals." If they don't accept that, we won't back down. Hayes agreed. The Federation has to understand that they're dealing with something different now. We're not the helpless species they once thought we were. Our place in the galaxy will be earned, not granted. A message was prepared and transmitted to the Federation's High Council, outlining humanity's terms for peace and cooperation. The Terran Union's terms for peace. To the Galactic Federation. After the events that have transpired, it is clear that the Terran Union cannot be dismissed as a passive species. We have proven our strength in battle, and now we offer you the opportunity to engage with us in a manner that respects both our power and our sovereignty. We will not submit to the status quo of the Federation's hierarchical structure. Humanity seeks to be treated as an equal, not as an inferior. We propose the following terms. Full recognition of the Terran Union as a sovereign entity within the Galactic Federation. The establishment of peaceful diplomatic relations between the Federation and the Terran Union. Shared research and technological cooperation between the Federation and the Terran Union, particularly in the fields of space travel and military technology. A joint effort to maintain peace and order in the galaxy, with mutual respect for each species' territorial integrity. We are prepared to negotiate these terms further, but the foundation of any relationship with the Federation must be based on mutual respect and equality. The choice is yours. Signed, General Elena Hayes. Terran Union Military Command. The Federation's dilemma. The message from humanity was clear, and the Federation was left to grapple with its implications. The Council was divided. Many members of the Federation were eager to avoid further bloodshed and saw the value in cooperating with humanity. But there were still many who believed that allowing a species like humanity to rise unchecked could destabilize the delicate balance of power that the Federation had maintained for centuries. Admiral Xal, understanding the weight of the situation, took the lead in negotiating the Federation's response. We must offer humanity a path forward, Xal said. We cannot ignore them any longer, but we must also protect the Federation's interests. If we allow them to dictate the terms, we risk fracturing the Federation itself. The smaller species will not stand for it. The Council deliberated for hours, but finally, a decision was made. The Federation would agree to the first of humanity's terms, recognizing the Terran Union as a sovereign entity. However, the remaining terms would be carefully negotiated. A galactic summit, humanity's seat at the table. A month after the first battle, the Federation and the Terran Union agreed to meet at a neutral location for a summit. Representatives from all the major powers of the Federation, along with General Hayes and President Carter, gathered to discuss the future of the galaxy. The summit was held on a space station orbiting a neutral planet, where leaders from across the galaxy could come together and discuss the terms of humanity's integration into galactic affairs. The room was filled with tension as species from all corners of the galaxy took their seats, eyeing the Terran delegation with a mix of suspicion, admiration, and caution. General Hayes stood at the center of the room, flanked by President Carter and the Union's top diplomats. It was a historic moment. Humanity was no longer an outsider, but a central player in the galaxy's future. The Federation had acknowledged humanity's strength, but the true test would be how they would navigate the complex political landscape of the galaxy. For the first time in history, humanity had a seat at the table, and the galaxy would have to adapt to a new reality. End of Part 5, A New Beginning. The Terran Union had won the first battle and secured their place in the galaxy, but their journey was just beginning. The Federation, while reluctant, had been forced to change. The question now was not whether humanity would be a force in the galaxy, but how that force would be used. Would they become allies, or would they challenge the status quo even further? The future was uncertain, but one thing was clear: humanity's place in the galaxy was no longer in question. The Terran Union had arrived, and they were here to stay. The shifting tides, the dawn of a new era. As the summit concluded, the galaxy held its breath. The Terran Union had entered the complex political theater of galactic diplomacy, and the entire balance of power was shifting. The Federation had recognized humanity's sovereignty, but the question remained: what would humanity do with this newfound power? And how would the other species of the galaxy respond to the undeniable presence of Earth's people? On Earth, the Terran Union was already making moves to solidify its standing in the galaxy. The world had united under one banner, and the various colonies across the solar system were expanding rapidly. The technological advancements humanity had achieved in a short time were now being shared among their colonies and with select Federation members in the hopes of fostering cooperation. General Elena Hayes, the revered leader of the Terran Union military, had returned to Earth after the summit, her face a mixture of satisfaction and resolve. The negotiations had been tense, but humanity had secured what they needed, a seat at the table. Now, the next phase of their strategy would unfold. "We've come a long way," Hayes said, addressing her top officers at the Union Command Center. "But we're far from done. We've made it clear that humanity is not to be pushed around. The Federation might have agreed to recognize us, but that doesn't mean they'll stop testing us." Her officers nodded in agreement. Humanity's victory over the Federation fleet had left its mark, but the road ahead would be a series of negotiations, alliances, and careful maneuvering. The galaxy was vast, and not every species would be as open to cooperation as the Federation had seemed to be. The first alliance, the Zelthan Terran Pact. A week after the summit, a breakthrough came when the peaceful Zelth species, known for their diplomatic prowess and advanced ecological technologies, made an unexpected move. They offered to forge an alliance with humanity, recognizing the Terran Union as a partner of equal standing. The Zelth had long been wary of the Federation's militaristic nature and had admired humanity's swift rise to power. Zelth Ambassador Asha arrived in Earth's capital with an eager yet cautious expression. She was met by President Carter and General Hayes, who understood the importance of this moment. The Zeltha's influence in the galaxy was significant, and their support would be a major boost for humanity's position. "We have watched you, Terrans, and we believe your place among the stars is not just inevitable but necessary," Asha said during their meeting. "Your strength is undeniable, but it is your vision, your ability to adapt, that we admire most. We offer our hand in cooperation." President Carter extended his hand in response. "The Terran Union seeks to build a future where all species can coexist. This is not just about power, it's about progress, and we believe your partnership is key to that." General Hayes added, "We stand by the principles of mutual respect and collaboration. Together, we can ensure that the galaxy is a place where strength is balanced by wisdom." The Zelth Pact was signed within days, a monumental moment that marked the beginning of humanity's first true alliance outside their solar system. It wasn't just a military pact, it was a commitment to a shared future, one that promised cooperation in trade, technology, and diplomacy. The Federation's challenge, rising tensions. Not everyone in the galaxy, however, was pleased with the Terran Union's rise. The Federation, though outwardly cordial, began to show signs of deep internal tension. Species like the Vorial and the Drexel, who had long enjoyed the privileges of Federation dominance, began to question their place now that humanity was a recognized power. Admiral Xal, though having been a proponent of peace, could not ignore the growing unease among his peers in the Federation. The federated planets had long believed in their superiority, and humanity's quick ascension was unsettling. "It is not enough to recognize them," Xal remarked during a private council meeting. "We must ensure that humanity does not continue to upset the balance we've worked so hard to create. There must be limits to their influence. We cannot allow them to dominate the Council." Federation Councillor Iller, still seething from the loss of their battle with the Terran Union, nodded in agreement. "Humanity's presence disrupts the natural order. We must find a way to limit their influence, or they will threaten everything we have built." As the Federation leadership debated the future, a new faction within the Federation emerged, one that advocated for an aggressive stance toward humanity. They were calling for the Federation to step up its military presence around Earth and its colonies, using their advanced technology to counterbalance the Union's growing power. However, a faction led by Admiral Xal continued to push for diplomacy, recognizing that a second war with humanity could lead to irreversible consequences. It was clear that the Federation itself was on the verge of a fracture, one that could either unite the galaxy or tear it apart. The growing influence of the Terran Union. On the other side of the galaxy, the Terran Union continued to expand. Human colonies on Mars, the Moon, and the asteroid belt were becoming hubs of innovation and military might. The Terran fleet, bolstered by new alliances, was patrolling the far reaches of space, ensuring humanity's sovereignty and maintaining peace in the galaxy. In the Terran Union capital, General Hayes sat with President Carter, both of them watching the unfolding events from their command center. The Zelth Alliance was a significant victory, but there were many more challenges ahead. Not all species would embrace humanity's rise, and even some of their allies might turn wary as they grew stronger. "We need to be strategic," Hayes said. "The Zelth are an important ally, but we can't rely solely on them. We need to build more relationships with species who are skeptical of the Federation's dominance." Carter nodded. "We'll keep expanding our diplomatic efforts, but we also need to ensure our fleet is ready. If the Federation forces a conflict, we must be prepared." Hayes stood, a fierce determination in her eyes. "We've already shown the galaxy what we can do. Now, we need to ensure the Terran Union remains a power for peace and progress." The next challenge, the Dark Horizon. As humanity's influence in the galaxy grew, so too did the intrigue. New factions, some old and some previously unknown, began to make their presence felt. Rumors of a hidden alliance, a mysterious power gathering in the farthest reaches of known space, began to spread. Whispers spoke of a group that believed neither the Federation nor the Terran Union should be the dominant force in the galaxy, and that the time had come for a new order, one that would challenge both the Federation's rule and humanity's rise. In the dark corners of the galaxy, an unseen threat loomed. End of Part 6, The Calm Before the Storm. The galaxy was changing, but its future was still uncertain. Humanity had proven itself as a force to be reckoned with, but its journey was far from over. The Federation's internal strife, the formation of new alliances, and the rise of unknown threats meant that peace was fragile. The Terran Union stood as a beacon of hope and strength. But how long would that beacon shine before the shadows of conflict returned? The galaxy would soon learn that the Terran Union was not only a force of power, it was a force for change. And with that change came challenges that would define the future of the stars.